by extraterrestrials. They have learnt many important things in their journeys, and in sharing their experiences with us, we can learn some crucial truths about what it is to be terrestrial.
My name is Paul Green, and I've been abducted by aliens on several occasions. After years of telling myself it didn't happen, I finally accepted it.
My name is Francesca Moss. In July '96, I was abducted by aliens. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with this, and I'm still not sure whether it's been a positive experience or not.
I'm ELSIE OAKENSEN. I've had a very strange experience, but since then some wonderful things have happened, which I believe are the result of it.
I'm James MILLEN. I'm involved in a support group solely for people who have had a close encounter or an alien abduction. I'm also an abductee.
My name is KINSELLA. Not only have I been abducted, but I've also experienced an alien being.
I'm Reynolds. I've had an extraordinary experience which I'm still trying to find an answer for.
Ros, I'd like to start with you. So what happened?
Ooh. It was just like an ordinary evening. Me and my boyfriend was going to visit a family and relatives up in Corby in Northants, and it normally takes about 2 hours and 2.5 hours to drive there. It was about 8 o'clock at night. It's just getting dark. It was September. And the first thing that we noticed was this horseshoe-shaped group of lights. It came swooping over the car, blue light bouncing everywhere on these electric cables. It shot off over the fence and over the hedges and disappeared away, and then it came back a little bit later and actually chased us for about 6 miles or more down the road, actually parallel with us. As I looked out the passenger side the window, you'd actually see it alongside. It's like a big white light from the side.
So at this point, the fact that it was chasing you, you were obviously scared.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Absolutely. I mean, it completely, from that point, it completely rocks every foundation of everything. I mean, you start straight away. It's an aeroplane, it's a helicopter, it's a hot air balloon, it's a, it's the moon. It's straight away you start thinking, what is it? And then you start on this like snowballing effect, where the next thing that happens is the car stopped. And I'm sort of screaming at my boyfriend in the passenger driver's side and saying, for Christ's sake, get this thing going. I'm now blaming him, thinking he's playing around or something.
And you weren't interested in the paranormal before any of this happened?
Country and western horses. It's a long way from UFOs. And, you sort of try, in your head, you're trying to make sense out of all this that's going on as it's happening second by second, and each second seems to be going on forever. And then suddenly, the next thing is you're in this thing. There's like this dirty grey-pink room, and you sort of feel like subdued, sedated.
And was it actually dirty?
Yeah, it had this dirty feel about it. It had a strange atmosphere. There was this smell of rotten eggs. Yeah, a smell of rotten eggs. It was the strangest.
I can relate to that.
Feeling. The weight was wrong. And it was like this atmosphere in there.
Yeah, I can relate to that, because when I had my experience, I was strapped to a bed and I was naked, and the room, it was very dark and there was a lot of mist in there, very dank, dark. Yeah, and very unsettling. Yeah. Very unsettling.
I mean, so you've gone from this situation where 1 minute in the car, the next minute, what the hell am I doing here? Where am I? And then you go through into this next room, and there's like there was this 3'6" little grey-blue guys, sort of like, you think, well, go over, and all you can see is this great perspex pedestal in the middle, and they're trying to make you go towards that. I rushed over to the window, and all I could see was my boyfriend frozen over the bonnet of the car in this sort of like blue haze down below.
Literally frozen?
Yeah, he's over the bonnet, he's looking in the engine, he's not moving, he's down there, there's like a blue negative effect all around, and...
So you're looking out the window?
Yeah, looking out the window, down at him. Because this thing sort of like, it's only 50 yards away, so from that sort of an angle, looking actually down onto him. And then everything sort of seized up inside. It's like my brain just sort of said, time out, folks, you know, what on earth is happening? And there's all I can remember is like these spidery fingers and these like 3'6" fellas and moving me all the way towards this table, and then I just blanked out. Like I said, the next thing I know is I remember vaguely a very, very tall fella with sort of like a white robe, and most beautiful eyes, blue eyes. And I always remember that. That was a nice thing. And then suddenly you're back in the car and you just feel like you've been drugged, and it's... Did it happen? Was it a daydream? You know, I mean, but it's still there.
Yeah, it's the same with us. I mean, I witnessed this thing with my twin brother and my sister, and we had a dog. And what actually happened was it was on a winter night, and I'd just come back from work and gone into the kitchen, and we were talking about everyday things. And my brother, he went into a type of trance, and there was this charged atmosphere everywhere, and he said there's going to be an earthquake or Grandma's going to die. Well, I didn't make any sense to what he was trying to say, but there was this atmosphere everywhere.
And is he not the sort of person who would normally say something like that out of the blue?
No, it was like he was in a complete trance, and of course we thought he was crazy, but our dog, we had a dog then, Benji, his attention was focused outside the kitchen towards the hall, and bearing in mind this was a winter night, it was dark, and where our doors were, front doors were with the hall, it was frosted glass windows there, and this light appeared and lit up the whole of the door, and this very small black 3-foot-tall being stepped through the door, and not opened the door, but I mean it was as if it had become translucent and had stepped through, and when it stepped through it ran into the study or the downstairs bathroom, and my God, it was like, you know, what the hell's going on? And your mind, as you say...
I think a few viewers at this point will be wondering, that is impossible, they would say.
Yeah.
But what people have got to start to understand is these things, whatever they are, were not born on Earth. They don't comply with things as we know them in everyday life.
They are actually bending...
Time or space.
Bending time.
Bending time and dimension physics, it's a completely different thing.
I mean, studying this and looking at the alien phenomena, and the one thing that really nagged me was the ability of how they were able to do this. And of course it led me into looking at other areas such as near-death experience and the abduction, and I'm saying, well, okay, these things are able to go through walls and doors, and abductees are able to do the same thing. You have the skeptics saying that's impossible, but it still happens. And I come to the conclusion that perhaps they are able to tap into the human psyche, that part of us like the soul, and use that, take that part of us away.
I want to carry on with this particular discussion later on, because I'm very curious to know what happened when the little man came into the house. So what happened then?
Well, it ran into the downstairs study or the bathroom, as I said, and disappeared. Now, my reaction at that point was, my God, there's an intruder in the house. My mind would not accept the fact that there was a 3-foot small being with a large helmet on its head, and very diminutive, very small, with a leathery type uniform on. My mind would not register that. Even though I was looking at it, it was saying no.
You've drawn him, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Maybe while you continue to talk, I can
actually, there's a picture there, of that one there. And I reached behind me in the drawer to get a knife, and I took the knife. And at this point also, it's very important to note that the dog was going absolutely mad. I have never seen fear in a dog before, as I saw our animal. It reacted very strangely. And then the being ran up the stairs and disappeared. And when we made a full search of the house, it had gone. It made no noise when it moved, but its uniform brushed against the plants that were in the hall at the time. And what we should have done was check for any imprints on the floor, because it was a smooth carpet, but there was nothing.
It's so easy to say what you should have done afterwards. You know, why did I take a camera with me on board?
Sorry, it's interesting you saying it didn't make a sound. Because in 1978 I had a similar experience with a grey stick man. I didn't know about greys at the time, but there was a grey stick man that came into my dormitory. This was in Africa at the time. I was in school. It was a very large dormitory, like a barracks if you like. And this grey man suddenly appeared and came running towards me in the middle of the night. And it didn't make a sound, despite the fact it seemed to be labouring as it was coming towards me. Not a sound.
Did your people make a sound?
No, not even a ship.
I haven't been regressed, and I saw the small beings when I was young, which I thought were Snow White's 7 dwarfs. you know, all round me, all smiling and happy and giving me this sense of safety and comfort and fine.
But soundless.
Soundless, yeah. But messages going into my head which I didn't understand.
You know what they're saying, you know what they want.
Know what they want.
Can you imagine what it's like? I mean, you're standing there, and when this incident happened with us, with the man in black, seeing it happening with no sound, it is the most... There is a disturbing element to it, because you're standing there, and I'm watching this light part while this thing moves through the door. And your mind goes into shock.
Yes.
And you can't... It's like you're frozen. Time slows down. And the other thing is that the atmosphere at the time was so charged. It was like someone had come over and put colour over black and white.
Yeah, this is where the negative things comes in, isn't it? It gives this sort of negative effect.
It's as though they're putting a sheet over it to somehow bend or change the environment.
Yes.
So the ones of us read once, it takes, and the rest of us, you can be in the bed with your partner, and the person in the bed doesn't notice it.
I mean,
that's true.
Yeah,
that's happened.
That's it. That has happened to me.
It's always
as well.
happening, yes.
And I had the experience where my wife was actually, we were in a tent camping, and I saw these objects in the sky, and I called her out, so she came out of the tent, and we looked at these for a couple of minutes, and then she said, shall I make a cup of tea? Normally she'd be terrified of the UFOs, and I was going to get the camera, and then like a feeling of elation came over me, which tended to subdue me as well. That was the last thing I recall. Until 2 hours, 35 minutes later, walking into the tent, my wife's sitting there, and I'm saying to her, they've gone now. And she said...
You notice how you don't notice the time pass?
No, that's right. We know.
I didn't know that I'd lost 3.5 hours until we got to Corby, and they said, hang on a minute, it's like nearly 2 o'clock in the morning. You know, past 1:45, and I thought, hang on, it should be 10 o'clock at night. Oh, you know, whoa.
My watch actually stopped during the abduction. And when I did come back down into the field, I went back home and 5 hours had elapsed.
But I can't even wear watches now.
Yeah.
It still must have been very difficult for you all to to come out and tell people.
It's impossible. At the time when it happens, it is.
It's still very difficult even now. I mean, there's still a lot of people who don't know about the experience, and I kept it very quiet. I actually thought I was going mad after the incident, because I had no interest at all in UFOs, and when the incident happened, it sort of tortured me for ages, thinking, you know, you're going crazy, because it's not something that you hear about. You don't just sit in a field and 1 minute you're whisked into a craft. It just doesn't sound physically possible. And also, I didn't think I had such an imaginative mind to even think of anything like that.
So do you wish it hadn't happened?
To some extent, yes. Yeah.
See, the thing is, with me, it was very difficult, because my brother and I, we write children's books, and of course the thing that really got to me was the fact that people would turn around and say that you're imaginative, that you imagined all of it. But my God, you can turn around and you can say, look, you know what you saw, you know what you experienced, and when people are on the outside pointing to you, it's as though you've got all the critics in the world looking at you. When you're saying, hey, excuse me, I'm trying to understand a problem that happened to me, something that I can't explain. All those people that you thought could help and understand you don't. They turn away.
Yeah, that's true.
They turn away.
They in your face, or what's worse is they sort of nod knowingly and then give you a very wide berth.
Or even go to sleep while you're talking about it.
Yeah.
They literally
and then you get locked down into this thing where all of a sudden the only one that can answer this problem is yourself.
That's true.
Yes. Isn't it? And
it's been very hard. It's all right, please carry on.
Oh, I was going to say, I was just the opposite. I drove under a dumbbell-shaped object at Weedon in Northamptonshire.
Yeah.
It must be catching up there. And as I drove under it, I could see that it was a grey, plasticky-looking dumbbell-shaped object, which I'd got to travel under it because I was in a line of traffic. But after I did so, I stopped and looked back, and it was still there, and then the green light started to flash. There was a green light under one end and a red light under the other. And then I got back in the car and went along the road, and the electrics of the car started to play up, and the car slowed down. Then it was as if I coasted under some trees and went quite normally up to third gear under these trees, and suddenly I was sitting in complete blackness. The normal light of the day had disappeared completely, and I couldn't see the car, the road. I could see absolutely nothing. And when at last something did happen, and a light shone, a circular white brilliant light, completely circular, about a metre in diameter, and it had no beams at all, but it was just there on the road. And I said, good gracious, out loud, and suddenly I was about 30 yards further down the road. Natural daylight had reappeared. And there I was, travelling in third gear, as I had been when I realised that the car had stopped. And I don't remember at all being in control of the car during that distance. But I drove home and found when I got home that my journey had taken half an hour instead of the usual 15 minutes. And where I differ from you, I didn't know anything about UFOs like you, but I felt that if I told everybody I met, there'd bound to be someone there who would know, and how wrong I was.
Really? How many people did you tell?
Oh, everybody I came in touch with the following day. I went to work and I stopped with everybody at work and said, we'll have a cup of tea and I'll tell you what happened on the way home.
That's very brave.
I realise now, yes.
The
I didn't
difference is that with you, it was the lights. I mean, everybody that I speak to who've had a light, have seen a light, they're quite happy to talk about it. But the minute you go that one extra and say, look, I bumped into little blue-grey, grey men.
I couldn't say that at the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, you know, you just can't say it.
Yeah, it's quite acceptable to say that you've seen something in the sky and you don't know what it is, but when you say, well, actually, I was abducted, and you can give a description, that's when the fear in other people...
You can go to the police station and say, look, I've been raped, I've been murdered, somebody took me, we had a black mask and guns, but the minute you go in there and say, excuse me, there were little grey men, you go, ha, 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 yeah.
Do any of you feel exploited by the UFO community?
Very much so. We're always brought along to sort of be the promote the book or be the firing line to say, well, this is, you know, they always ask us what to tell a story, then they take us away, and then they have a whole load of people saying, well, this is what really happened. They weren't there.
I'm part of a group of 40 people who've had close encounters, and I can't turn to any one of them, possibly except maybe ELSIE, and say, would you like to appear on a TV programme or do an article? Because the people, they just want to stay right away from it. They understand that people do not understand what is going on.
So I bet you were glad when you heard that we weren't going to have any UFO experts.
Yes. They are. Frightening, they really are frightening. Because there seems to be a general consensus in the whole mind of the public that if anything comes from above, it's going to invade the Earth, and that's going to be the end of us. And that may well be true. Yeah. Haven't I go into that? But we also know from all the history that anything that's attributed to be a god and loving also comes from up there. So now the difference is we're all sitting here. We haven't been bumped off or murdered or disappeared. And we all, I think you'll find, that a lot of us would qualify it by saying we all feel that we've gained some advantage out of this.
Yeah, I mean... Sorry.
So I was going to move on to you, Paul, because you've said that it's made you a better person. Perhaps can I hear your story and you can explain how it's made you a better person?
In the past, basically, I've sort of tried to debunk any time I had an abduction and say, oh, it didn't happen, there must have been a rational explanation for it, and it wasn't until February 1996 I had an abduction which seemed to stretch over 2 days, if you like. Well, it didn't take place within a 48-hour period. I mean, I had 2 separate incidents within approximately 24 hours of each other. That blew my mind completely. On the 17th, I saw a blue man in my bedroom, which I couldn't account for. He just appeared, and it was glowing. It was a nice blue glowing colour, and normally I should have screamed my head off when I saw it, but it was giving off an aura of peace, if you like. It threw something at me as soon as I discovered it was there. I wouldn't say threw, more likely it stretched out its hand. A ball of light came out, a pale yellow-coloured ball of light, and slowly came at my face, sort of hit me right there. I didn't feel anything, but it was like somebody just switched off the lights, or somebody switched off the power, if you like, and switched the power on again. Time had jumped, because it happened at dawn. It was still dark in the room, and all of a sudden it was broad daylight. The birds were tweeting outside. You could hear the cars in the street. Time jumped. That was it. I was very happy that day. I was elated. I thought, wow, that's got to be proof. I saw something right here in my own bedroom. I told the wife. I told anybody who would listen. And I was happy until the evening of that day. I got scared for some reason. I've had this phobia that I might get taken away and not returned. That night, I felt a presence in the room. I spent the whole night clinging to my wife. I was really scared. Then about 5:30 in the morning, I heard birds tweeting outside. I thought, right, that's it. I can hear physical sounds outside. Nothing's going to happen to me after all. And I rolled over my back and I thought, I'll relax. And almost immediately something grabbed my hand. I felt a zap of electricity slowly crawl up my arm, very slowly. I could feel it was there, but it was very painful. And I opened my eyes in a panic, trying to shout out. I couldn't. And I saw this, again, a blue glow. And this time there was a face, very close, looking straight into my face. The eyes were very detailed. And I'm almost certain it was a female person, or a female entity, I should say, looking at me, looking down at me. And I could even see some emotion in those eyes. They seemed to be saying something along the lines of, "I've hurt him. Is he all right?" I tore my eyes away from the gaze, grabbed my wife. She woke up, and like we've all said earlier on, there's nothing in the room. She couldn't see anything. By this time, it seemed to have disappeared. I lay down on my back. Next thing I know, I just received this information, this message in my head, which said, "Your daughter and yourself are precisely the same." Now, that was very cryptic for me, and I thought, what does that mean? But I didn't even have a chance to even think about it, because immediately after that, I felt this buzzing vibration, which I always get whenever there's an abduction taking place. I floated off the bed, went round the room first time, came down onto the bed again. Immediately a second buzz, came off again, went round the room a second time. And the third time this happened, I went straight through the ceiling, which is supposed to be impossible. I went into the room above, or the flat above. The bedroom was empty, and I saw what it looked like. And I'd never been in that bedroom before. But I later had a chance to go in there, and it was exactly as I saw it at the moment when I was going through the ceiling and through the flat, basically. Went through the next one into a third room, right at the top of the building, which shouldn't have been there, because that should have been the roof. And all I can remember about that room is that it had grey walls, and the windows were sloping downwards like that.
Was the room dirty like Roz's room?
I can't remember any dirt being there. What I do know is that it wasn't clinically clean. Let me put it this way: it wasn't as if I was on a starship. It wasn't like something out of a Star Trek, for example, you know, with all the designs and everything. Yeah. I didn't see that. All I saw were just grey walls. But what caught my attention were the windows. They were sloped, and I was horizontal. I wasn't standing vertically. I was floating horizontally, and I was kicking with my legs at the windows, trying to get out. That's all I can clearly remember. The next thing I know, I was flapping my wings like a bird, or my arms rather like a bird, trying to fly over a city. This seemed to take all my willpower completely, and I think they did that so I couldn't see what was happening. When they'd finished with me, I suddenly found myself back in bed again. And that was it. That was the end of it.
With the flapping of the arms, I've had this as well. And the only way I can relate to this is that somehow you're in a weightless environment, and the automatic thing that you want to do is somehow sustain yourself in that environment. So you try flapping your arms.
No, that is possible, yes.
Well, I actually went on a bungee jump. Might sound strange, but completely non-UFO. But the strangest thing, it was a reverse one where they actually catapult you up as opposed to drop you around. And as you go up, you automatically, it's strange, you automatically hold your arms out and try to flap. And you watch anybody doing a bungee jump, that they do that.
Did anybody suffer? I mean, when I actually was taken up into the craft, I can remember going up, just really upwards fast, and I felt so ill. I had a headache in my nose and everything. It was like real pressure. And I just wondered if anybody else felt anything, because afterwards I had nosebleeds.
I had nosebleeds.
And headaches.
Headaches. I still got the headaches. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you go through all
and the nosebleeds, now, I don't know if you might find this. My nosebleeds, which were exactly 50 years after my abduction as a child, and the blood was a light orange, red. Now, normally nosebleeds are dark, but the blood that goes to the brain is highly oxygenated and would be of a lighter colour. But what also happened, of course, I had something drop onto the palate of my tongue, and I took it out, and this was at 8:30 in the evening, exactly 50 years to the date from when I was abducted as a child. And I looked at this little piece of what appeared to be metal, and on the end were like 3 little bumps, and on those little bumps were like little pins, 3 little pins on each end on 3 little bumps. I thought, well, it's not a tooth filling, and I had my meal at 5:30ish, and it wouldn't write on paper. I didn't know what to do with this thing. And I sat holding it till about 10 o'clock again, roughly about the time when I arrived home as a child, about 10:30. And about 10:30, I threw this thing away. Now, in the bin. And it's like, I don't know much. At that time, I'd heard of implants, and I assumed they were little round ball bearings of some sort. And hadn't even entered my head. But this, again, is classical, because when you think afterwards what you should have done,
Yeah.
and you haven't, and you've got to then wonder now, why did you not do the obvious thing, which is either put it on a shelf or leave it somewhere
Then it
so
goes
you
like
can have
10
a look
years
at
down
it.
the line,
It's like
do
saying,
you-
said Jude, when that comes, throw it away.
Maybe
get
they were
it turned around
telling
and
you to throw it in the
Oh,
bin.
yeah.
The thing is that when I can associate with what you said, Fran, and what you've been talking about, is that after I had the encounter with the man that came through the door, I encountered this chap here. And what would happen was that I would be lifted, I would be floating through the house at night, and I would be taken through doors that were shut and actually pass through them, and I was floating up, rather like that, and I was seeing myself going through the glass, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, I'm going through the glass. How is that possible? The thing is, though, that what actually happened was that when I got out of the conservatory, I remembered I was being controlled by something. I wasn't in full control myself. There was some other outside influence. And what actually happened was that I felt as if I was being stood up on the patio that we had at that time with the pond, and there was a long garden. And I would look up, and it was as though this feeling saying, everything's fine, there's nothing to worry about. And as I looked up, there were hundreds and thousands of UFOs going through the night sky, and I'm thinking, my God, all them people, they're so ridiculous that they're really here. And then that feeling of whoosh, you go up. And then everything went blank until the morning. There was a gap. And I think what happened in the gap was when I found myself in the room with these guys, and they were doing all this stuff. And as I'm coming down in the morning, I'm flying in the sky, and there are two beings beside me, but they do not want me to look at them. And my attention, as dawn's coming, is focused on the conservatory, and just above the conservatory there is a huge ship, and underneath the ship is a man, as was I've drawn in the picture, with a tall pointed hat, a pointed face, 2 slits for eyes, 2 dots for a nose and a slit for a mouth, and he wore a one-piece uniform. His arms were folded like this, and his expression was of complete rage and anger, and it was like, whew, you know, as I'm coming down to the ground.
He was in a bad mood with you.
Yeah, well, it appeared that I had obviously done something that he wasn't pleased with.
Could I try and qualify? I know we shouldn't be saying that, because I don't think anybody really knows the truth of what's happening. But again, in my experience, and through meeting with so many people that we all have these meetings where we have to find out what's going on. Okay, we don't want the publicity, so we're not advertised at all. The figures, I think they adopt either a uniform or their appearance so that we can accept what we see. You get various descriptions. They're never quite all tallied, always a little bit different. But I had the feeling on my last encounter where I was in this room with small people and large ones, they were communicating with themselves and with me. I understood all that was going on because I could understand they were communicating somehow, but I cannot to this day describe those people. And I think the reason is, if I could see them, I probably would be in trouble as well. I may well have reacted in a way that they could not have coped with. I think they present something that we can cope with, and then that is why it's always so strange.
I had a
Yes, that's
vivid
true.
description of them, because once I got into the craft, the actual going up and then coming round in this craft, whatever it was, that actually blacked out. But then I can remember coming round, it was very, very bright light. It did have a funny smell to it, but it was really bright. And I was laid down on that, I should assume a table, I was laid down. Something was across my chest, I couldn't move my chest. And when I looked down to the right side of me, there was these three beans, I don't know how to describe them, whitish grey. I couldn't tell you whether it was the body or a suit, but I couldn't see any seams or zips or anything. It was all in one. It was really, it was so weird. They had very, very large black eyes. They'd no ears, no nose, no mouth, no facial hair, anything. And it was their eyes. And there was like touching with, I don't know whether it was a stick or something, but there was touching on my leg and everything. Then
Were they being nice
See
to
that
you?
stick?
No, I just think they was totally indifferent to me.
Yeah.
I didn't
Totally.
emotionless.
Yeah, it's like it's a laboratory.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
there to do a job. There's no
That's
cup of
it.
tii, no talking
No,
to you.
there's
Do the thing.
nothing.
Thank you. Bye
You didn't really. To them, I was just something to whatever they were doing to me.
I felt I had more sympathy from the taller beings.
Yeah,
than
that's
from
it.
the
The taller.
interesting, yeah.
Whilst I was looking round, I saw another young girl, a teenage girl, in exactly the same position as me, opposite me, and I felt this sudden rush of like maternal love. I thought this poor girl in the same situation, an overwhelming maternal love, for
Did you
her.
try and talk to her?
No, I couldn't. And then this being came. He was identical to the others, except for he was about 6 foot. and he had the same black eyes, but they were absolutely, I can't describe it, beautiful, the eyes were. And he's staring into me, and I suddenly thought that I could understand him. He wasn't speaking out loud, and he was saying, you should be asleep, you should, you know, go to sleep. And I had this unusual feeling of euphoria, excitement. I felt really good, when in actual fact I should have been terrified.
So even though they're indifferent to you felt warm feelings to
only of this one being. But then again, I think that this was sort of like manipulated. I think he knew that he could do this.
He was there to sort of like calm you down. They're the ones that are there to do the jobs.
Yeah, and I got the impression he was like the boss as such. I'm saying he, I mean it could be, you know, either. He was just staring into my eyes, and then I did feel sleepy. And as I say, the next time I came round I was back in the field.
One's got to remember that when we're talking about the eyes, the main communication, when people are watching televisions, there's an eye watching us. Yeah. And when you talk to somebody, you don't look at their right arm or their left foot, you look at their eyes. The eyes are the reinforcement of any communication we make, even as human beings, but we use sound waves in air because there's plenty of air around. If you're born in an environment where that doesn't exist, the universal communication of fish, birds and whatever is by eyes.
Now, Elsie, I want to go back to you, because where we left you, you were going around telling everybody what had happened, and none of them knew how to deal with it at all. So what happened after that?
Yes, I told the local newspapers and everything, and it was reported in there, and then the ridicule started.
So did you not think you'd get ridiculed until...
No, it never occurred to me, no. No, I was quite blasé
Had you never
about
ridiculed... Well, you obviously had never ridiculed others.
I didn't know anything about UFOs. I told the people at work, and one young lad said, oh, that was a UFO. And I said, what's a UFO? And he said, an unidentified flying object. I said, well, I couldn't identify it, and it was above the ground, and it was an object. Yeah, I suppose that fits. But
I didn't know anything to do with UFOs, and luckily, like a family friend, Phil, he like put me in touch with other people. But I mean, it took me a while to even sort of say to him, you know, this is what's happened. And then when I spoke to a few other people, I gradually began to think, oh yeah, it's not just happening to me, it's happening to others. But I tended to sort of like have head in the sand routine. I didn't want to go to conferences, and I didn't want to meet other people because I wanted to forget it, pretend it had never happened. So
well, I was different there because I talked about it openly. But I do also remember saying to myself, now, I don't know why, but I've got to behave normally to make people think that I am still normal and that I'm not special in any way or stupid or any of the other derogatory things that
think that we sort of go around with our bedrooms decorated with UFO paraphernalia and, you know, I've been abducted by aliens.
I was just so frightened of being ridiculed because if you say this to somebody, it does sound ridiculous.
Oh, it does.
So can I go back to where you're sitting in the cornfield, you've just been returned. I mean, who was the first person you told?
It took ages. I mean, I actually went home, and for a while everything was going wrong in the house, electrical. I had a rash on my arm. I had problems with nosebleeds and headaches. And also I had to go to the hospital because they thought I had a blocked sinus or something was causing a blockage. It took a while, and then I had a friend of the family, and I knew he was into UFOs, but we never really discussed that because I had never any interest in it. And I thought, I've got to tell somebody because I'm going mad. And I actually spoke to him, and he sort of said, oh, I can put you in touch with somebody. He said, that sounds, you know, I believe you. And that was the first time somebody says to me, I actually believe you. I hadn't told anybody because I thought nobody else would believe me. And up to that point, that was it. It was the only person I told.
And have you been ridiculed since?
I haven't really, until this programme, I haven't really told that many people. I've told my family and a few close friends. But I think they sort of look at me as if to say, well, we know you, but, you know, it is a bit of a thing to swallow, you know.
Well, do you think that you were chosen for any particular reason?
No, I just feel that I was there at the time.
Do any of you think you were chosen?
The biggest question I think we all got is, why me?
Yeah.
A little while ago, an investigator who shouldn't have said anything about a meeting that we had stated on television that we had the need to feel selected. We had the need to feel chosen.
I don't want
rubbish.
to be
No, I didn't.
And this is what investigators do. They really...
I don't
because
either.
believe you me, when I was lying on that bed, strapped, hot, and they in this room, and there was dim lights, and the lighting and mist was all over there, and I could see them moving. All I could see were their eyes, and the only thing I could think of was they were dragon eyes. And it was very emotional for me because they had something inside me, and it felt organic, and I wanted them to get it out. But believe you me, you didn't feel chosen then when you're laying there and you're having this done to you.
So none of you remember, those of you who were probed, none of you remember actually the probing itself?
No.
No.
I remember the probe being inside. And
Yeah.
I'd read about
got
this.
marks.
I'd read about this so many times, and I thought, ridiculous, you know. But when it happened, I mean, there were things that I couldn't verify within most literature because it felt organic. And I was struggling. And in terms of proof, you're not really in the right frame of mind during that time to ask them for something to say. But what they did to me afterwards, I think, as a way of a comfort to change the situation, was that they took me through a screen, and they showed me a landscape, a hilly, rocky landscape. And the strange thing is, I'd never seen this before, yet I had. I'd been shown it there, and yet there was a memory recall of me seeing it before somewhere else. So I don't know in terms of how much they interplay with the imagination.
Or if they'd actually taken you before and shown you the same things to pacify you.
Yeah.
Did they tell you why they were showing you it? Did they explain?
They were trying to convey the importance of this place, yet I couldn't understand what they were trying to explain. In terms of proof, again, when I if I just finish lastly, when I saw this guy here, this one here, when I reached him, he had such an angry look on his face, and his arms were folded, and I wanted to ask him. I thought, well, I've got to have proof. I must have proof to take back, because no one will believe me. So I said to him, look, how the hell can I get through locked and bolted doors? They're locked, because I'd gone through them. This technicality, this strange occurrence, was the focusing of my mind. I thought about it when the being came through the door, when I was being dragged through the windows, and it was stuck in my mind. It was the only sane thing I could think of to ask him. And he raised his eyes to the underneath of his craft, and it came out all gibberish. He would not tell me, and I knew he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me a thing.
Do you know why he wouldn't tell you?
Because I'm no scientist, but, I mean, had he told me something, it may have benefited me in a way. I don't know. I mean,
we'd understand.
I think
for a
I've been
start,
told something what's vitally important, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
That's the
When it's time, it will come out. It will come out. It will make sense to you. It's like me. I got the engine plans, and I drew these engine plans, and they don't make absolutely no sense to me at all. There's this thing called rubidium, a rubidium crystal. It was like the main drive, and something about it being below zero. And I gave this to this physicist, and he looked at it and said, this is nothing, and then it's faded off the paper completely. And then he said, I don't believe this. And then it came back up again, and he's had a look, and he said, hang on a minute, I've heard of this crystal. And I thought, what?
When did that happen?
That was in 1988.
Now, this is to do with cosmology, which is the Big Bang and the steady state. And one of the little things that come to me was that the Big Bang and the steady state are the same thing. And what you have is the event horizon of a black hole. Now, just before Christmas, there was a load of programs about cosmology, and he left out one of the main ingredients, which was time dilation. So if you're travelling towards a black hole at the speed of light, and if you go through the event horizon, you've got to assume the speed of light, because light is travelling that direction inside there. Then if you get infinite, what they call infinite mass, if you achieve the speed of light with Einstein's theory of relativity, you are then in a different dimension, because the time dilation and the infinite mass and the quantum physics, when you're coming back to quantum field effect, you know, the mind boggles. It doesn't solve anything, but what it does, as what I'm trying to illustrate, is when Ros says something about a crystal, in fact, if you studied what she actually said and tried to put it, you may possibly find it works. What I say about cosmology is nothing important, because it's irrelevant, because it's too beyond our time. But if you look at it, you find it's a very simple explanation. They don't even mention when they go on TV.
Yeah,
time dilation.
They cut bits out. It's like,
I've
seen so many space footages of the Earth in orbit from the NASA spacecrafts, and you see these things all around the orbit. Yeah. Invariably, there are cases where a projectile or a missile is trying to shoot one of them down, and these guys, they whiz off. Yeah. This is stuff that we are never shown, and I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. We are supposed to be the intelligent species here. We have supposed to progress so far in technology in terms of that field. Why aren't we being told about this? And it is there in black and white. What more proof do people see?
What frightens me is when I draw a picture of a spaceship or whatever craft, and then I find many years later that somebody goes on television who's worked on the Roswell case, worked on the Roswell ship, and he picks up a picture of the Roswell ship and I say, hey, it's the same thing.
I've become a psychic artist. I do writings, like this, for instance. I mean, that was one of the first pictures which I saw, and the writing that came with it. Can I read it? Mm. White Swan is your guide and helper, and you have seen his influence in your drawings. White Swan was a North American Indian, and his tribe watched over and revered the silver trumpeting swans, now unfortunately near extinction. If you can find a picture of one, you will see that they have a special beauty, and then understand why you are drawn to them.
Me, I mean, I get the messages, but I can only do them in pictures, and what on earth that means, I do not know.
So in a trance-like state, you do that?
That will go any way up, down, around. There's like a universe. There's a universe.
I think what I find funny is that everybody here has got an artistic talent. And personally, the same thing happened to me. I couldn't draw at all.
I draw horses before.
Have you brought any of your drawings with you?
No, I didn't dare bring any in. I was nervous.
Are they as good as these, though?
They're similar, actually, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
Now that you've come out and met some of the others who've shared your experiences, do you think you'll be joining a real support group?
I think so, yes. Yeah.
No obligations, there's no finance involved.
Yeah.
It's no to do with money or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Just being there.
Yeah.
Support.
It's just to get rid of that feeling of being isolated.
To find more of us.
Yeah.
Well, it's happening automatically in the street, isn't it? When you walk down, you sort of talk to somebody, or you meet somebody, and somehow you get this feeling. You know, it's a psychic thing comes out, and you sort of see somebody in the street. Somehow you get drawn together, and you get talking on completely nothing. And suddenly, somewhere during the conversation, it comes up, and they've had the experience, and we're all coming together for something, and it's coming soon.
I would agree then.
Yes.
And that's when all our memories will be awakened, and then we shall know why it all was.
Happen, yes.
Yes.
Does it help, by the way, having the six of you sitting around sharing your experiences? Is it?
Yes, it
This
does
is
help.
like this is
It
the
does
typical
help.
witness support group meeting.
Yeah.
You
This
sort
is
of come
how
along
we-
and you sort of feel like you're the only one. There's nobody out there. There's nobody to help you. If you're like me, I mean, I spent like 3 years locked in the house, scared to go out. All I did was at night, if I went to sleep, I'd start doing things like this. It's all done by dots, sleepwalking, drawing these pictures. And I'd do like hundreds and hundreds of them, and then I'd be typing hundreds and reams of information and pictures. And there's no one you can talk to, there's nobody you can turn to, and you sort of think, well, I'm the only one. And then suddenly you meet somebody else and they say, well, I've had the same experience. I mean, I'm sitting here now with Fran, and she's... It's the same.
It's the first time I've actually
Same
met
thing.
other people with the same
You
experience.
think,
I mean,
God,
the
you know,
same
I'm
thing
not
here.
making this up. She can't be. How can we make
The
up the
ex-
same
We also
thing?
have a massive input of
Yeah.
information.
The experts, the so-called experts, if they really looked at us, they'll find that there is some kind of psychic expansion that happens with all of us. It affects us in different ways. Some of us become psychic, some of us become more
true.
Yeah,
perceptive
we all
in
be
other
very,
areas.
very
That's true,
psychic.
yes.
These are the areas that are
Have you become
fascinating.
psychic?
Yes.
Yeah, I've actually been able to tell what people are thinking, predict certain events.
Nothing to do with events.
It's you feel. I still feel that I'm actually in link with them. I know this might sound a bit paranoid, but I still feel that sometimes what I can see, that they can see too.
Yeah. Only,
Same thing.
and
I get-
I've got
I
a
get-
fax machine.
Yeah, it's like flashbacks. I still get flashbacks.
Yes, I get
And I
plenty
see,
of
I see
flashbacks.
things that aren't there, which you
Yeah.
think I'm going crazy. I mean, I can look at a city
It's like
and I see
listening to the
destruction
radio.
and things, you
Yes.
know.
Have any of you had any psychic experiences since you've been sitting here?
I have had psychic experiences, plenty of them.
In the last half hour or so?
I've had
Not sitting here, no.
I've had this thing that we're all... the time is coming near, and we're meant to be
You
here.
feel,
Something here.
I
We're
don't
meant
know
to
whether
be
you agree
here.
on this or
It's
not.
back to the
disagree,
original
but-
point, that why us?
Something
I mean,
something
I
is
thought
going
that.
on.
I thought, well, why me? Because I'm just an ordinary person. I've got no power. I've got no influence on anybody.
Yeah.
Why me? Why not a politician they could have taken?
So
No.
when you say, I want to clarify. What do you say meant to be here? You mean meant to be here,
Here,
sitting in the studio?
Something has happened
Brought
that's
us
brought
together
it
in this way.
together today for something.
It's rather like
important.
cause and effect,
Cause
isn't
and
it?
effect.
Well, it was the researchers,
Bit
wasn't it?
plain
Do you
to
think
the
that they were?
eye,
Do you
though.
think
I don't
that
know
some,
why.
that they?
The new sorry,
It's the strange thing. If you're on the outside, you can't really explain it. It's very hard to comprehend. We know that it's coming together for a reason. There's more and more of us that have had experiences that accidentally bumping into each other. It's sort of like coincidence, but it's not a coincidence.
I'm just hoping that these people who are probably watching this programme will identify with it, and then suddenly they won't feel so alone.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
They
that's
They will.
very...
It's the one reason why I've actually come out, why I've come
Yeah,
on
that's
television,
it.
because there are lots of other people who must be having the same type of experience like I was having. I've probably been a bit lucky. I managed to hold myself together. I used to go out to bookshops and boot sales looking for books to read up on the phenomena. And I'd take it home, sit down, read carefully, and most of the time I was able to say, that's happened to me. Oh, that's happened to me. And that sort of made me feel, right, I'm perfectly normal after all. I'm not nuts.
The crazy thing is to find the things that you find when you're talking to each other, such as the smell and the weight and the ship and the atmosphere. You don't find that sort of stuff in books. But when you start talking to each other and the way you feel afterwards, all they ever talk about is the event, not what happens afterwards, and what happens in your life, how it changes your life.
Totally.
For those of you who have met other people, do you find yourself just automatically believing them, or do you ever meet people who tell their stories and you think, I don't believe them, even though mine happened?
Yeah, I still tend to be sceptical, yeah.
I think the one of the
Are you
world's...
sceptical tonight? You don't?
Yeah.
You both?
Yeah.
You didn't from meeting?
You're
one of the world's
always,
biggest sceptics, I am.
checking it. You're always feeling your way through
You
it.
check yourself. I could constantly check myself. I try and rationalise the whole experience. I try and make excuses for it.
Can I ask also, when you said that they'd given you a message but you can't remember it, I mean,
that seems quite ironic, really.
Yeah.
It's just that I do get flashbacks even now, and I do see things. Like, I tend to know where there's going to be sort of alien sightings. I see east coast of Yorkshire, and also in places far afield like Mexico and places. I see place names which I've never even heard of.
You get the time and the date?
Yeah.
I get the feeling when a crop circle appears. Sorry.
Yeah.
But what do you actually think the message is, even though they can't remember? Have you got any inkling of what it could be?
No, I haven't. No, not at all. I feel that I was told something. But obviously, you know, they've told the wrong person because I can't remember anything.
It's funny you should mention that, because in 1984, when I was in Russia, I was studying architecture at the time. I was in the city of Minsk, in Belarus. I also had an experience. It was like an out-of-body experience, except I had an encounter with what I termed at the time a know-it-all glass skull. Now, it was years later, quite recently as a matter of fact, I discovered that there are such things as crystal skulls. I didn't know they existed before. This is 1984, and I had this experience. I suddenly found myself floating in space, and there's this glass skull in front of me, and it says, ask anything you want. And I asked, where do the pyramids come from? And I got a whole jumble of information back, which went straight into my brain. That's the way I could describe it. Then I said, where are UFOs from? It's interesting, Philip, that you should mention a rocky landscape, because I saw a rocky landscape, and I saw what looked like a UFO going down into a hole in the ground. Another one came out and flew off again. It didn't look like somewhere on Earth. Then after that, the minute I thought of a question, I was getting an answer. It was like two modems linking up at a tremendous, at ISDN speeds, if you like.
I call it my fax machine.
I want to go back to Fran's message for a moment. I mean, do you get a sense whether it was a benign or a malevolent message? Do you think was it a message which would benefit us, or was it a message which would scare us?
I don't know. I still try to come to terms with it. I don't know whether... I mean, obviously, if they were malevolent, they could sort of wiped me out there and then at the time. But I don't know. I just think they were totally indifferent. They were I was just part of an experiment. But since the event, I mean, I've had a lot of problems since the abduction, and a lot of things have altered. My view of life's changed.
In a good way?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes. Yeah, I've become...
Have you all found it out?
Yes, yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Beneficial.
Yeah.
And there was one time, there was 8 of us on a platform giving a lecture that we were asked to. We didn't volunteer, but we were asked to, so we complied. And they all said it had been a beneficial experience. We know there's downsides to it. The overall impression was that it had been beneficial.
I mean,
opened their eyes.
Yeah, the thing is, though, that with me, I don't think it's a message to convey to humanity, so to speak,
No.
but they have led me down a path of, it's really morbid and it's strange, but to seek out death and rebirth, looking into the area that
See
most...
the good in the bad and the bad in the good.
I mean,
and
I look at life now and I see most people and they're very much down here to the ground. For some reason, my mind is looking towards death and thinking, there has to be something afterwards. They're trying to show me and direct me in looking in that area. And that's where some of my research has been going into that particular area.
But what do you think is the alien plan with us? The agenda?
I think it's bringing us up to the next level spiritually being and the way that we think mentally. I mean, we're still locked in our little wars and with our little material needs, and all of us have had an experience where we're on another level now. It's the only way to explain it. We see a much bigger, much more open picture.
What about you, Elsie?
I don't like the word alien, personally.
Yeah,
I
aliens
would rather call it extraterrestrial,
well,
because these beings are from outside the Earth. And I think that they're there to help us, and I think this is an awakening of memories that
Sometimes
we've collected in past incarnations and between incarnations.
Isn't it sometimes a way, like if you're trying to teach a child not to burn it, to put his hand on the fire because he's going to burn it, and until the child puts his hand and the nasty experience of burning the fingers, they'll learn not to do it. But from that, they'll learn also a whole new... I mean, this is a very simplified version. They learn what fire is. Fire gives you heat, but you don't sort of mess with it, and you can go on from there. And I feel it's a two-way thing. At the same time, we're helping them because they've got their problems, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're taking us up and doing these experiments. I think they're trying to save their own race as well.
I don't think anybody can make a judgment about what's happening.